Okay, so I don't work for South African national parks at this point in time. I don't work for the government at this point in time. I speak here as an elder that has gone through the experience, and as you will know, what elders do, they focus on giving back. They focus on reflecting. And that's exactly what I have actually done through this presentation. And for the benefit of today, I really thought what would be nice is to talk to the practical experiences than really being up there. Because when I read through, in terms of the center, I understood that it is like a new initiative, and I thought this was nice. I know the theme is reimagining protected areas, and I specifically, if you see there, it says reimagined. Why? Because that is what we went through in South Africa at the time. And obviously, I'm challenging the center as part of this. So just to do the niceties, I want to thank everybody else that is here with me today. I don't come with answers. I'm here to learn as well and engage with you. Secondly, I really want to thank the institutions that have put this together. It was really an impromptu decision. I'm also really very excited to be here, and I really want to thank Anita for the hospitality and efficiency as well. Dr. Obasanjo, this was very, very nice for you to actually take a chance on me. Okay. So what I'm going to really talk to here is about what South Africa went through after the liberation. And at the time, I was one of the staff members that was at the forefront of transformation. And I thought, just going back from 1996, yes, I had other things that I did. I was a lecturer at the time because I have a natural science background. But there was something that wasn't really resonating with who I am. I didn't want to study the leg of a locust for me to be a professor. And then I decided there's something that is missing, so I got into environmental education for that reason, and that's how I got into the sector. So I don't have a conservation background. I don't call myself a conservation background, but what I talk to is the part of the change agency that we did. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a case study of, again, a garden route national park that followed this new conservation model at the time, that was informed, obviously, with all the international community discussions that are happening. And at the time, I was a regional manager in the Garden Route National Park. The photo that you see there, it's part of the Garden Route National Park. And I was the very first black woman. Someone took a chance on me again to be part of the Garden Route National Park. I wasn't a leader, but what I was proud of myself as is to actually be the voice of the voiceless. When I speak with the communities, I defend the conservation. When I'm within conservation, engaging with the scientists, I speak on behalf of the communities. And I was able to play that role because for me, I was very conscious that for us to be able to speak the same language, somebody must take a chance and transcend. If you go to talk to the people that were previously excluded from the system, the only way you can do is to attempt to speak the language. By the way, Dr. Obasanjo, even if you can't mention my full name, John Fisher did a good job yesterday. He actually just mentioned my name. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm also going to make an example with an organization which is in the Eastern Cape, in implementing one of the programs that you see here. This is where I start as a teaser, because that is what I used to do. So you get into this field, you have conservationists, then they talk about, photosynthesis, ecological systems, processes, and they're kind of like, really? Are you talking about the river? And you say, it's the river system. Are you talking about the ecology? Fortunately, with the natural science background, I was able to actually talk to them and tell them. In fact, I challenged them at the time that conservation is really about schooling about natural resources, but there are people who are leaving that setting. So for me, I contrast conservation with rural living, because that is how I understood it. I mean, if at a higher level you really think about what the global community does, they converge after 2 years or so, Convention on Biodiversity, and they talk about natural resources, how to use, recycle, rehabilitate, etc., all the processes that we need to do to make it a point that everything is all right, in exclusion of others. That's what it was at the beginning. And also, if you really think about conservation as a concept, what it was? It was really focusing on exclusion in approach and practice. That is how we did. We fenced protected areas, In fact, at some stages, we never recognized other areas that were not fenced, that, for instance, the wetlands and the river systems as actually protected areas. We never thought about managing the landscapes. So the language we used, as I'm actually talking to, and some of the questions that people asked, really, you come to me and you say, we must conserve. For whose benefit? Who's benefiting here? And I'm sure in other countries as well, like it was in South Africa at the time, it's like we had only tourists from outside that would benefit by visiting the national park system. In fact, it was in the law that black people will only get into the national park system as laborers. That's it, ranger and cleaner, So when we then started transforming, during the liberation period, and people were actually saying, okay, who's benefiting from here? Do you really recognize my spiritual values and the cultural values and the fact that I have to actually use the medicinal plants from this sector? Are you recognizing that, And there was also a very serious contested issue, which still is now in terms of the land ownership. The knowledge that is there, amongst others, we start talking about it's indigenous knowledge systems. Okay, really? Is it about that? How different is it from what is written in the journals? So it's those contestations that I'm actually think that as we reimagine, we should think about what language that we can use. I also just thought that maybe in terms of the definition of the protected areas, we just have to highlight that, the global community looks at conservation as a long-term intervention. And the outcomes, we might not see them now. Most of the time when people talk to conservation, we're talking about the geographical spaces that could be defined and say, okay, I see it is here. But in another, I think over time, the global community started to think about, there are other effective ways that we can look at the protected areas, and hence that adopted definition that we actually talking to here. So in 1996, during liberation, South Africa wasn't part of the global community, But I can say now that the law reform has actually taken into account this kind of discussions to make it a point that the system and conservation in the approach is as transformative and also inclusive. Here I'm just highlighting here the legislative framework that we have, that after the constitutional mandate that we had, which is in Section 24, that mandates not only the agencies that are legally mandated to manage these protected areas to be inclusive in approach. It is a constitutional mandate, but what it does, it actually just allows for anybody who's contesting what we do to say, in terms of Section 24 of the constitutional mandate, this is what you do. And that is what is liberating. It starts with legislation. And I think as we joined the global community, then we started looking at how we can put some clauses into our legislation. And as you will know, over time, then you will have policies and regulations that as part of the adaptive learning processes, we actually include as that. So we developed these environmental laws, and we have these policies and regulations that over the years we kind of review, and they become part of the National Environmental Protected Area so that we can streamline and be efficient. And here I'm highlighting the various aspects that are talking to what is applicable in terms of the protected areas. You're talking about marine, you're talking about chemical and waste and everything else. What does this mean? If you are a manager of a protected area, that means you have to be clued up and understand the applicable legislations. They might in some way be competing, but you must be very clear. I didn't put here cultural heritage, for instance, and we all know that protected areas are inclusive of the cultural heritage sites that before were never recognized in these systems. So the communities around are able now to come to us and say, no, I want to have access to the grave. I want to do a traditional event in there because my ancestors are lying there. Before, that never used to happen. What did I do now?
Working.
Or maybe I must do this. It stopped working.
Try that.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, try. Or that.
I'm happy that I didn't bring a virus from.
I think maybe here. I think the battery just came open. No. Yeah, I think the battery is dead.
Okay. How do we move?
Let me go ask.
It doesn't.
It's frozen.
Yes.
It's frozen.
Maybe we can take. We can.
Hang on.
We can probably not put it in the. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'll use that. I'll just use that. Thank you very much. So in this slide, what I'm indicating is basically the specific clauses within the Protected Areas Act that are talking to what is it that we need to do. So the clauses, even in terms of the establishment of protected areas, it starts there, is that the minister cannot proclaim a protected area without you as an agency showing evidence that you have consulted various stakeholders around that protected area. And in fact, what happens is that people have got a right, you have to provide this evidence. These were comments that came out, and this is the response that minister we have. And that's a public participation process that we all have to actually go. And there must be like a concurrence as well. Let's say they are scientists or there are traditional people who say, no, we don't want it to this way. It becomes a very big problem. I can tell you various stories of the discussions and the navigation, negotiations, frustrations that we had with the communities around the management of protected areas. From the establishment to the managing, how you manage a park. You all know that when you start a new organization or whatever, you have to have a strategic plan. So the management plan is the management plan of a protected area. In the management of a protected area that's going to be approved by the minister, you have these clauses that are very specific. Consultations must be there. You must be talking about the programs that you are going to do. And these programs are talking to what the needs of the people are. You're not just going to thumbsuck and say this is what we do. So we also have to make it a point that there are really processes, zonations that we actually do on the protected area to say, oh, this is how people are going to be able to access the park. If the park is under land claims from the communities, you must be able to actually say, we are going to have a co-management agreement, and these are the things that we are going to do. These must be in the management in the management plan. So I think the points that I'm making here is that in fact this impact statement is an impact statement of the national department. If you look at it, it's about prosperity, it's about equity, it's about living in harmony. People living in harmony. Because most of the time we kind of like say social, ecological. So there are two things that so we must balance the act. And that's where the languaging sometimes have a problem. I just thought it's important to highlight before I get into the case study in terms of the protected areas. The ownership, that the terrestrial protected areas, you will see from the very first charts that most of the legally protected areas managed by the state agencies are under land claims. 61% of those. Most of them. It's a momentous task, laborious task to be able to even start to restitute. In fact, there's a cabinet memo that we can't give it back to communities, but we have to have co-management strategies where the communities are going to benefit. There's benefit scheme that we're going to talk to. Out of those state management land, you can see that the South African National Park System, which is a national government entity, is managing about over 50% of that land. When we talk to private land ownership in South Africa, we refer to the land that is managed by white people. So it's private land, they've got game reserves, so they've bought their land, they do what they want to do, and its conservation is bushy and small tourist areas, there's hunting that happens there, and people are accruing benefits out of that. And this is exactly where the point of transforming the protected area. And one of the things, obviously, as part of the global community, I thought maybe the people that might be interested, there are targets. I don't want to say they get imposed by the national communities, the international community, but when the world congregates, they really talk about how do we expand more, and these are the things that we are expecting from African countries because marine protected areas, world heritage sites, and all those kind of things. And South Africa as well has done the mapping. You would see from 2010 that we really had to do a lot of work to differentiate and categorize the kind of protected areas that we have, which is the map on the right. And I don't want to be dwelling more on that. I just wanted to make sure we are very clear. So the national targets are actually there. These national targets, what is actually very nice is even now inclusive of the marine protected areas. Before we would focus on the terrestrial part. So the marine protected areas, if you see a name called Ocean Pagisa there, it's just a program that we've put together is what is it that we can do. Very highly contested. Protected areas, because sometimes you find that there are very small fishermen that have been living in these areas, and if we really want to, to protect this, we have to regulate the uptake and everything else that's happening here. Sometimes we have to actually deal with those issues. Okay. This is the example that I really want to make about this integrated conservation approach. I thought I must actually put in that picture there so that you know that I was part of I don't know if you are able to see me. This is the minister of, the previous Minister of Environmental Affairs, which is Martinus van Schalkwyk, who proclaimed the Garden Route National Park in 2009. And I had the privilege of actually managing that area from 2005 to 2010. And in fact, I was dumped there to really consolidate the coastal area that was managed by the national park before, and the indigenous forests that are there in a landscape. So this was really, really a very exciting project, not only for people that were on the ground, but just for the national park system, because it was something totally different from what we have. Other national parks have got fences. People who go to a national park in South Africa will know they were all established using the old model. So here people were asking a lot of questions. People were skeptical. How is it going to work? Especially if you have along the landscape more than 1,000 private landowners that have competing land use like agriculture. So we'll get into that. This is where I thought probably we need to be talking to and understand as well the evolution of conservation. And I'm just highlighting here that in the South African context, when we started talking about integrative biodiversity conversation, it was really about we were looking at an ecosystem inclusive approach, because we know that the ecological systems and processes do not have boundaries. If we're talking about a river system, there are communities that are out there, they're probably getting dirty water from the water that is coming from upstream from the agricultural land and all that. We're talking about fire as the same thing. It doesn't know any boundaries, especially if you're dealing with the landscape. If you're talking about rhino poaching, as the same thing. It doesn't matter if we have fences, some things are happening around the park. And the tools that we really do have in South Africa, which is where we applied it in 2009 as the establishment of that park, are the tools that I've highlighted there. And those tools are solely there to ensure that there is access, there's ownership, there's active participation within the national park system. This is what I'm going to talk to. In fact, from 1996, when I was employed in South African national parks, in Golden Gate National Park in the Free State at the time, we were like part of it was a pilot program. We adopted a social ecology approach, and we did environmental education and community development. We learned along the way. We applied some approaches. There were contestations along the way. And in 2008, Parliament We're asking a lot of questions because there were a lot of people who were contesting the work that we do, that, oh no, we're faking transformation, they don't really get benefits and whatever. And we had to do the hard work of saying, these are the programs that we will actually employ within each national park. So that was approved in Parliament. Today, if you go to South African national parks, you will find out that the programs that are transformative programs are part of the system. Depending on which area you are, you will have either marine education or you will actually do wildlife management. But this is what is compelling. And if we are not showing evidence when we go to defend to Parliament the annual, for the annual report, parliamentarians are going to ask, they do their research, they're going to ask. We understand that the community, even if it was one person, the communities are actually saying that you guys are not doing this. What are you doing to do this? So you must be able to say, our target was this last year, and we achieved this. The reason why we didn't reach the target, this is what has happened. And you know what happens in Parliament? You have people from different perspectives. Others are supportive of the work that you do, others are not. And so we are really continuously accountable to the nation about the work that we have to do. So these programs, as I am highlighting here, and I'm not going to go through each one of those, but these are the attempts by government, by the entities to ensure that we have equitable access, equitable active participation. We are recognizing cultural heritage that is within, and we're protecting and we're managing it for the benefit of the people. When we talk about marine management, we're not only like exclusively managing these protected areas, but we have to ensure that even people that are living from these marine resources, they are able to access the resources, but in a regulated way. That's what we do. And even those regulations, you just don't tamsack and bring a scientist and that's it. You have to negotiate them. Is it really, or is it two times a week? Is it enough? I eat fish every day, and this is where we depend on. So this kind of relationship is really, really very important. It's not easy. Absolutely. Why is it not easy? That you'll find that, for instance, in a national park, the staff, you have more conservation people. We have few people that are dealing with these programs because these programs are not generating income. People who are working in tourism are probably best because we will see that there is income coming. But this is actually more expenses. Sometimes you don't see return on investment very, very soon. So what do? You continuously have to justify why is it that we have to do that. Not even within the national park system, but even interdepartmental. Again, this has stopped. Okay, again, it's not moving. Maybe it doesn't want us to talk. Okay, I'll do what he did. And it doesn't escape.
I've turned this off completely
I think it's
now.
just the memory on the laptop. It's just really slow.
Aha.
I think we just have to be patient with it, unfortunately.
So what we also do, whilst they are busy there, as for instance, we have dedicated a week that we call it Sand Parks Week, where all South Africans with identities can come and access the park without the accommodation, for accommodation, but just coming to enjoy the national park system. So in that way, we are really hoping that, people get to understand that the park exists and they can even spiritually benefit from the existence of that park. Been talking about the Garden Route National Park. Garden Route National Park is, when I was flying down here, I was kind of like reminded of what the Garden Route National Park, which is about 121 hectares, that we proclaimed at the time. And here you can see from the west to the east, you travel 120 kilometers. I don't know what is it in the kilometers, whatever. 12 miles. Is it 12 miles? Okay. It's along the national road. You have forest areas that you will see. The green part, they are actually along the landscape. So you manage from the mountain to the sea. You have different municipalities managed by different political parties. You also have, it's within provinces, different premiers. So what do? You have to always manage those political dynamics, and everybody else needs to be important. Going down to grassroots level, there are competing needs, people, and the expectations of what we need to do. You'll find that there are traditional leaders, for instance, they want to extract some medicine from it. And from the other side, maybe you have Rastafarians here that want to come and do traditional activities and also smoke. At the time, this thing wasn't legal, So there's multi-stakeholders that are there. And I think this is the gist of what we are all about. The times of having entities, government entities managing conservation is long gone. The language that we use, we need to consciously simplify it if we're going to win. The students that are interested in conservation today do not have to be focusing on one discipline. You have to actually have the skills that deal with what you call soft skills. You're managing people, the how you communicate, be very conscious of the who you are, and understand that other people might have different perspective. Listen. Take time to listen. Because unfortunately, we're working in an environment where historically people contested the field. It's not going to be resolved now, but if we make decisions today, like what this center is, the Institute is trying to do, maybe the impact and the benefits will be enjoyed by the future generation. So I'm going to challenge at this time the topics and the projects that we engage in. Because this was done a long time ago. We can't repeat the same mistakes. We have to go out there. So today I had the privilege of going through this building and seeing the wonderful work that was done by the global the education program. It's exactly about that. It's about us going out there, learning from others. The contexts are going to be different, but what works for this community might not work for the other community. We must also just really think about, what can we sacrifice? And why can't we sacrifice? Some of the things are not cut and paste, but also it's just not one, what do you call it? One-stop shop. You can't say, oh, this is what you do, this is what you do. You need to negotiate around the agreements and the decisions that needs to be making. So for me, this is exactly one of the things that today I kind of like, wow. I, together with the team, gave birth to a new conservation model in South Africa. And even if I have left that organization, no one will take it away from me. And if I go to that institution, to that region, after 13 years, there's a cleaner, there's a ranger, and there are scientists and the community members that will actually say, we remember you, you were there. It was hard. You are going to have media, you're going to have ministerial, what people are protesting in terms of the work that you do. But at the end of the day, we just have to be conscious and know that whatever the work that we do, it will benefit at a later stage. So please, if you go to Garden Road, if you go to South Africa, in fact, Garden Route as a tourism route is one of the third attractive destinations in South Africa. It's a tourist attraction. You have the rich and the poor. You have the different biomes that are there you can enjoy. But also now you can have very nice activities. The highest bungee jumping is there in the Garden Route. The biggest tree you will find there in the Garden Route. The elusive elephant. I've been there for 5 years. I've never seen that elephant, but people capture this elephant, and anyone else who says, oh, this is the elephant, and then you have the whole community actually saying, no, there's no elephant, and the other says, oh, you killed the elephant or something like that. But this is how, we've got the great landscape, the indigenous forest that is there. We've got the different types of accommodation, and it's really a very nice place to be there. And also, when you get there, you actually will not say, oh, this is where the park ends, this is where it starts. Because you are managing a landscape with competing land use, and all what we do is continuously engaging with the people to say, you must be proud to have this as a conservation, as a conservation model. I'm also just making an example of one of the programs that was used by the government as a game changer later in the years of 2016, because then there was a recognition that, sure, we've got issues in terms of land ownership. How do we make sure that black people own these private game reserves? How do they really benefit and make business out of the protected areas? We must invest a lot of money. So the two programs that we actually had, one was around the wildlife economy, and the one was around making business out of biodiversity from the plant system. So what I really want to talk to you is my experience of working now and implementing the wildlife economy system. I'm about to finish. I'm not going to be talking to the ambitious targets that we have. It was a very big discussion. Many people were there because we needed to tell Parliament that we're doing so much. We understand that it's very difficult, but this is what we have to do. We had to convince government and show the value chain of what we really want to do, how people can be involved both in primary activities and as secondary contributors. You know, just to make an example, what happens when we have to count animals every year, we actually hire helicopters, or there is monitoring that happens. You count animals, or there's rhino poaching. You know, a lot of money goes, and the budget that we have goes to the helicopters. Who owns helicopters? Black people don't own helicopters. So who benefits from the system in any way? So we had to be very clear and say, okay, if you had a helicopter, and this is not exclusive of the fronting. You know the terminology of fronting? It's actually having a black person and you have someone who's really benefiting. These are the things that we had to learn because everybody else knew. So what is it that we need to do? How do we make sure that we make an intervention? I'm making that, for instance, as an example. So what happened is that government had to actually make sure that they set aside infrastructure that is going to invest in making sure that the black people are benefiting from this wildlife program. I don't know if it happens anywhere where you can have an effective program where you have to coordinate the different departments with people with different egos. Because everybody else has got a budget and they've got their own transformation project. This was so ambitious, and it still is, because what it meant as an entity, you go, Department of Agriculture, we need money for putting fences for this, because it's not our mandate, as conservation areas. So you go to that, and then you look at how do we build the capacity of these people. There's a different department that deals with capacity building. We don't even have the money and the skill to actually do that. But what we could do is to donate animals. That's at the tail end as protected area. Infrastructure has to be there. So what it means is that these institutions have to coordinate. They must be part of fundraising and assisting the communities. We're talking about the business plans here. Assisting these communities or even individuals that are interested. I'll tell you one of my problems that I do have is which by design in policy, is that we actually undermine our intentions. I don't know anywhere else other than a family where you can group people together from different areas and you say, you have to be involved in this project. And that is why most of the community projects failed. Because sometimes they say, oh, no, this is women projects. I don't care if we women. We all have different interests. We are not a homogeneous group. The same thing with communities. People think because it is in a geographical area, therefore, no, these communities will benefit. No. You have people that are land claimants, others don't even stay along the community. They stay as far away in Gauteng. But there are people who have migrated there. And at the same time, you have a municipality that is there that is looking after community development for everybody that is there. How are you going to really make it a point that you separate the people? So what I'm highlighting here is that, yes, this ambitious program is there, but what happens is that we need to have this multi-stakeholder mindset in managing protected areas. And if we're going to reimagine conservation and we are conscious of inclusivity and equity, it's not going to be a child's play. We need people that are going to be, not do. I'm highlighting here in that province that since the year that we started in 26, the board approved the thing, we at least now can say after 5 years, we have about 7 of the sites that are black-owned. But you can think 7 is nothing. But if you think about the work that is done behind the scenes to make it a point that the bare land that was there, there's infrastructure that was there, money has been fundraised over some time, and then business plan identifying the infrastructure that is needed there, and dealing with the communities that are actually fighting on benefits, you will understand that this is actually not a child's play. And this is the kind of work that people on the ground that do. And just for but one province, at least was able, through the work that have done diligently, to actually have almost 1,000 hectares included into the protected area system, which wouldn't have been at the time, and some animals having been donated into black-owned land. This is where things starts. It's about the lessons, and I think this is what I'm highlighting here. Even with the wildlife program, just on its own, you can think about it. Sometimes we make these targets on land. Next thing, we haven't actually planned right because we have competing land that we needed. There's people who want land for agriculture, people who want land for human settlement, and here you come in as conservationists. I mean, targets must expand the protected areas and whatever. What is realistic for who? Because we have made and signed agreements at an international level, and we didn't actually think through about what is happening on the ground. There are issues around finances. I don't know in this country, but I know in South Africa is that the fiscus is diminishing. And the expectation is that agencies, they have to actually generate income through tourism or any other ways, fundraising or whatever. Do you think the people within these institutions have been trained to do fundraising? Really? Okay. And we have to do the private, what we call it, the private people, commercialization, people that are going. Do you really think we know how to work with the people, the private people, to actually be in there? And some of the lessons that we have learned is that we would have people with money. We're going to build this accommodation, here. But if you know business, you will know that the profit will probably be accrued over 10 years. What happens? The communities start contesting. They start going to parliament. And then they say, no, we see tourists coming in there. And what we're not doing, we're not actually getting benefits because there isn't that understanding of how to run a business. And what we have done conveniently, we promised at an earlier stage, this is what you will do in my management plan, this is what we'll do and whatever, and people want benefits just now. There are issues around the climate change as well and the skills that we have within these institutions. I think for protected areas in general, and I am hoping that the people that are here have this experience. And I think what we're saying here, I don't know that experience, maybe I was, that spelling, I think I was sleeping already. That protected areas are no islands. And they'll never be. We're managing landscapes now. It doesn't matter if they are fenced. We've seen how it doesn't work. Rhino poaching, you can even fight the people around the communities here. The people that are benefiting are in Vietnam. So how do you really deal with those the issues? And the work that we really have to do is beyond what we call protected areas. And I think we also just agree, when we talk about communities, what are we talking about? I think that's another definition that we talk to. When we talk about the communities, we normally refer to black people that are around there or those previously excluded, okay? But maybe you have communities of scientists, you have communities of ecologists, you have communities of whatever that have this stake within this. And I think what we really need to do is to make this differentiation of the stakeholders that are there. And unfortunately, what happens? The voiceless, they keep quiet. If you manage an organization, you know that the one that is quiet, there's danger there. Don't go with the loudmouth people. And those that are quiet, they go to parliament if you exclude them. So we really need to listen and take time to actually have that. And I don't know about technology, but I think there are technologies that we can use that are going to assist us to monitor biodiversity outcomes in an interdisciplinary manner rather than actually looking at it from the more I don't know how to call it. This is my argument here, that conservation is just rural development. In fact, the global community is recognizing that. It's not about balancing the act. It's long-term, it's complex, and all what we have to do, in very small ways, we have to actually tackle the issues. We have to actually adapt. We have to find ways. There is no one who has an answer. And in fact, you find that technologies or approaches, they actually are relevant for a particular period because the world evolves, things change. And we need to be adaptive in terms of managing these areas. So I highlight here with all the challenges that we have highlighted, that there are opportunities. I really do think there are. But we need to get out there. I mean, if we're talking about fundraising, I was talking to John just now, is sometimes we don't have to be so territorial and say, me as an agent, I am going to be doing this. There are other people, philanthropists, other people out there, NGOs. We mustn't run away from NGOs as that they are watchdogs and whatever. It's okay to build the capacity of the communities outside these protected areas so that they have the power to engage with us. And let people who have that experience assist. Because it doesn't work, and I can tell you I've been there. You can't actually talk on behalf of the communities and then you talk on behalf of you're not objective. Because I'm paid by the National Park System. At the end of the day, the decisions are going to be made. And then what happens is I have to go to these communities and say, no, you can't put cattle there. And they say, no, what do you mean we can't put cattle? There's grass there, and the grass in this community is whatever. What do you mean? Then I said, oh, no, the law doesn't allow. Obviously, now you're killing your relationship that you've built over time because the need is there. But if you have other capable people that could assist in the participatory process and bring us together to talk about how to resolve the conflicting needs in there, we could actually not be defeating the objectives, the community conservation outcomes. So for me, I see these are the opportunities. And the opportunities of an institution like yours has a serious role to play. Because you are starting just in the middle. When I say other people have learned lessons, how do you become a catalyst of change and challenge the status quo? What are the projects that you are going to assign to the students that go out there? How are you going to influence the policy? How are you going to be the voice of the voiceless? What do we mean by harmonizing people? So what happens most of the time, if you go to these big conventions, you find that there are people who are working with indigenous people this side. We have scientists that are talking this side. They're all talking about protected areas. We have the cultural heritage people this side. Really? Then you have marine people talking. How about everything is in here? And this is exactly my challenge to the students. Be the voice of the voiceless. Who is going to have a PhD as a scientist? Who's going to translate that which you have researched into simple language that other people on the ground will understand. What's your contribution? Thank you very much.